Hi, this is Joe with Timrick McNichol Jewelers. I thought today that I would talk about July's month stone, and that is rubies. Rubies can be worth a few $100s, they can be worth a few $1,000,000. What actually determines a ruby's value? Why are some of the finest rubies becoming harder to mine? Today, we're diving deep into one of the world's most fascinating gemstone. One of the biggest surprises for people is that rubies and sapphires are actually the same mineral. They're both corundum. They're a 9 on the Mohs hardness scale. They're extremely durable. The only difference is their color. Pure corundum is completely colorless. Tiny amounts of chromium replace aluminum atoms inside the crystal, giving ruby its beautiful red color. Blue sapphires get their color from iron and titanium, and yellow sapphires come from different trace elements. Pink sapphires. Well, this is one of the most confusing topics in gemstones. Where does ruby end and pink sapphire begin? Color gradually shifts from deep red into pink. Different gemological labs and different countries don't always agree what that transition looks like. Historically, some markets have been more willing to classify lighter stones as rubies. Western laboratories generally require a stronger, more dominant red. And that means one lab might call it a ruby, while another calls the exact same stone a pink sapphire. Neither is necessarily wrong, it's simply where they draw that color boundary. We at Timrick and McNichol Jewelers follow GIA guidelines for color grading. As all our company partners have been graduates of the Gemological Institute of America going back to the 1940s. And GIA classifies rubies as vibrant red to slightly purplish red in color. Gemologists evaluate several characteristics when they're grading gemstones: color, hue, tone, and saturation. Color is king. Hue is like, is the ruby truly red? Does it lean a little orange? Is it purple, brown? These are all really important. Tone is, how dark is it? Too dark? Is it a little light? Sometimes the stone can appear almost black. You have saturation, and strong, vivid saturation creates that glowing appearance that collectors love. And that's when you get into things like one of the most sought after colors is referred to as pigeon's blood. And what that means, generally speaking, is that you have exceptionally vivid red color with an outstanding saturation and often strong fluorescence. Most natural rubies contain inclusions, and it's expected that they're going to have inclusions because incredibly clean rubies are so rare and they fetch a rare price, which is pretty far up there. Some common inclusions are going to be some silk, crystal inclusions, fingerprints, needles. Twinning is another thing. Twinning is winning. It's when one crystal is actually growing inside of another crystal. It's pretty fascinating, actually. And because you will so often have these inclusions, there are going to be pretty common occurrences of treatment that ought to be disclosed at point of sale. Since nearly every ruby has been improved somehow, let's look at the most common types of treatments. We have heat treatment, and over 90% of rubies on the market are going to have been treated with heat to some degree. The heat can improve the color and the clarity, and the heat treatment is widely accepted throughout the industry when properly disclosed. Lead glass filled rubies is one of the most important treatments that consumers need to know, and also if you ever bring it to a repair shop, if you know, you really need to let them know too. Very fractured rubies can be filled with lead glass, and it dramatically improves the transparency. It looks way better, but it's also really low in its durability and kind of volatile when you try to clean it. What's the difference between natural and lab rubies? Not much, chemically speaking. Visually, though, I find that lab rubies are so clean that they don't look right. And it's usually pretty evident that it's a lab ruby. We don't actually get a lot of call for lab rubies in our store, mostly because people don't like the way that they look. But if you want a really good price point, you want color, and you want something that's going to last for a long time, lab ruby might just be your gem. When we're talking about it scientifically, they have the same chemical composition. They have the same crystal structure. They have the same hardness. They have the same optical properties. The only difference is that really one formed for millions of years and the other one was grown by humans in a lab. Why aren't labs more popular when it comes to rubies? Natural rubies have always been available at a wide variety of prices. Even beautiful natural rubies can be purchased for hundreds, not tens of thousands of dollars. Synthetic rubies are also not new. They've existed for over 120 years. In fact, I'm pretty sure they were the first modern commercially successful synthetic gemstone. And by the early 1900s, synthetic rubies were already being used in jewelry. And many antique rings from the 1920s all the way to the 1950s proudly featured lab rubies because it was the new exciting science of the time. And interestingly, lab rubies are actually more often made for the industry rather than for retail, use. Synthetic ruby crystals are used in laser technology. They're used in watches, scientific instruments, optics, and medical equipment. The first working laser demonstrated in 1960 used a synthetic ruby crystal as its gain medium. Why do rubies keep getting more expensive? Well, rubies are becoming increasingly scarce. Many of the world's most famous deposits have been mined for centuries, and mining today is just more expensive, it's more regulated, it's less predictable. Once you start tying in political instability, export restrictions have also affected the supply of the material. Meanwhile, demand for it has grown dramatically. The average quality that's being recovered today is generally lower than decades ago. Exceptional stones are still discovered, but they're becoming less common. So collectors are also holding on to exceptional rubies instead of selling them. Economics, less supply, more demand, higher prices, especially for untreated stones, and no one can predict the future with any certainty. So many gem experts believe that the finest natural rubies will remain among the most desired colored gemstones, especially since exceptional material is finite. Now I'm kind of saving some of the best ones for last. My personal favorite are star rubies, and one of the coolest optical phenomena in gemstones, I think, outside of the Alexandrite effect. It's created by thousands of microscopic rotile needles. And when the ruby is cut into a smooth dome called a cabochon, a light reflects off the needles to produce this 6-rayed star. And occasionally, you'll even see 12 rays on a really cool piece. And if the rutile silk is dissolved during heat treatment, then the star disappears. So a lot of the fine star rubies receive little to no treatment. Well, kids, we've talked all about rubies. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, or smart remarks, please leave them below. Till then, thanks for nerding out with me. Bye-bye.